I just got off of a long weekend training in Brainspotting, and a lot of people don't know what that actually is. So I'll talk a little bit about it, but really what I want to talk about today is the power of presence, the immense capacity that we have to self-heal when we're held in that presence, and how, as I've spoken to in the past, how this container of love, if we can reside in that place, just our incredible ability to transform, to heal and transform. I think we're living in a world where the last 3 years, so much has happened, both for us, I'm sure, individually and collectively, and yet we're kind of humming along as if nothing happened. And I feel like now more than ever is really a time to be held in a space of absolute acceptance and love, and how we're held in that space with pure presence, just the remarkable capacity that we have to heal and transform. And now's the time to really do that, as I think we're in a year where I would call it a turning point, and we really have a choice to make as to how we want to move forward. And I think, as I've said from the beginning, choosing the path of love is not just how we show up in the world, but it's actually really how we show up for ourselves and take care of ourselves and hold ourselves along this crazy journey we called life. And, being human is just, it's a task and a feat and a something unto itself. So that's a long intro for today, but we're going to talk about, I'm just going to see where it goes, actually. I always do it off the cuff and intuitively, but I think today even more so than usual. So stay tuned. This is Corinne Bloom, and you're listening to Raw Conversations. So I've clearly taken a deep dive into the right side of the brain and the deep brain. So maybe I'm wanting to make this podcast more intuitive than normal. Just a very, very brief kind of description of brain spotting, because I don't even know how I would fully describe it. It's so vast and really quite amazing. It was founded by a man called David Grand, and the training I took was with a brilliant man called Mark Grigsby. And what I love about it is, yes, it's based on neuroscience, but it's so profound and deep and so allowing and accepting of the human experience. It's I would say, a very intuitive process. And it's kind of like less is more. It's really about holding the space for the client, the individual, to access a part of their deeper brain, so beyond the thinking neocortex, into the deep part of the brain, into the brainstem, where, this is why I never got into just kind of talking therapy alone, because the trauma or our wounding or whatever happened in our life where, there was pain that was created or wounding that was created, it didn't happen in our neocortex. It doesn't happen in the talking part of the brain. It doesn't happen in the left brain, and we like to analyze things and talk about things, and there's nothing wrong to that. Sometimes, we can have an idea of what happened or what's going on for us. But when we're looking at healing, and I work very somatically, I work very much going into the experience, into the emotion. But as I've shared before, and if you've worked with me, you know this, that the reason why we can't just talk about things, we're not going to heal from that place, is because healing happens in the emotional body or in the cellular body or in the deep part of our brain. So what brain spotting does is it's a technique to access what's called a brain spot, which is bypassing the neocortex, bypassing the talking, thinking, linear left brain. And you're going into the deep brain where you allow what never got processed, right? So this is trauma. When we feel trauma, and trauma can be, as Gabor Mate talks about, big T or little t, right? It doesn't have to be some massive traumatic thing. It can be a little thing that created a spark of trauma in you. And what happens is our nervous system freezes, and the networking in our brain can kind of disconnect or feel severed or fragmented. And so what we're doing is we're accessing a point in the deep brain that then allows what didn't get processed because it froze in trauma to process itself. And that's where the healing happens. And what's remarkable is, I think this is so beautiful too. It's so synchronistic because we're coming out of a time, if you want to go into astrology, coming out of, going into the age of Aquarius and out of Pisces, it's like this, we've been told to follow authority, to follow groupthink, to hand over our power, even to say God. And I'm not putting down God or religion or anything like that, but what I'm talking about is we've handed over our own inner authority and our own inner power to heal and create the lives that we want. We've handed it over to something or someone outside of us. And I think that we are in a time, and now as we're moving into this age of Aquarius, as they're saying, that it's really about coming home to yourself and recognizing that as an individual, it's like we have to come back into the individual to also recognize that we're completely interconnected and everything is one. But we have to come back into our own inner home to really recognize the power that we have within us. And I don't mean power over others. I mean the empowered state of being that naturally arises when we are connected to our true authentic self. And when we're really connected within ourselves and we can embody our entire self, so this is really also the balance and the equilibrium of the right and left brain, of the masculine and feminine, you could call the divine and of the earth. There really, I think we're in a time where we're balancing out. We're finding that equilibrium. We're finding that center still point home. And from that place, healing is absolutely possible, and creation is absolutely possible. It makes me think of, that creation comes from silence, from the point of stillness, and silence is between sound, and stillness is between movement and motion. And life is a paradox, right? Because it's both and everything at once, but we're coming back into this still point. And so what's remarkable about Brainspotting is you're looking at this pointer stick. You're finding a place where your eye, I think David Grand explains it. I'm not wording this, I know, word for word, but where you look defines how you feel. So when you catch this point with the pointer stick where your eyes, as a practitioner, you're looking for it. And as the client that's done this work over time, you will also intuit, you'll know, that's where I can feel something is getting activated. And it's amazing. Like just where your eye goes, you all of a sudden will have this, this burst of emotion or this, sensation in your body. Something gets activated, and that's where you stay. And you stay on that point for the better part of an hour. And it's incredible what arises. It's truly remarkable. It's incredible to experience it. And it's profound to witness somebody going through it. And as the practitioner, you're just really holding the space. You might check in a little bit, but actually, what I learned was you hold back. And what's so amazing is because you're in this field of energy with the person that you're sitting across, there might be a moment where you think of something and you're like, oh yeah, I'm going to say this. I'm going to say this to them because this could really support them and help them. And then you wait. You're told to just wait. And inevitably what happened in my experience is that like within a minute or two, the client actually said exactly what it is that I wanted to say. But it's so much more profound as a client for you to come up with your own answers, for you to come up with your own inner guidance, because that's what makes us feel empowered. Again, we've been living in a society that's like, do as you're told. I will tell you if you're good or you're bad or you're right or you're wrong. You got a good grade, you got a bad grade, you passed, you failed, you succeeded, you failed, that some kind of external authority is going to give you the answers, right? And also some kind of external someone, a doctor, a healer, a guru, is going to heal you. Now that might sound ironic because I'm a coach that, is trying to help people heal. But what I've always seen, and I see it even more so now after this training, is that this is why I call myself a guide. I don't like to call myself a coach or this therapist or that kind of, because for me personally, I really feel like I'm a guide to support you. And maybe there are places where I can help guide and shine a light to show you the way. But really, it's about supporting you in finding your own way back home to yourself. And my job is to be the guide and really just to hold the space for you. And I think this is what really came out that struck me so beautifully over this weekend, was when someone can hold the space for you with such presence and acceptance, and it truly feels like you are being held in what I call the container of love. So much is possible there. I think we have, this is something that Mark Grigsby was talking about, and I would certainly agree with it, and I've felt this in the past as well, is we have this belief that it has to be really complicated in order for it to work. We have to really analyze, have to pull out all of these tricks and tools, and it's got to be very complicated, the healing process, because then it seems very smart, right? It seems very smart, it seems very clever, it seems very scientific, it seems very proven, all of these things. And actually, what we really are needing is to be held with presence, with acceptance, with love, to say, to show, to embody that no matter what you're thinking, feeling, experiencing, no matter what you felt and thought and experienced in the past, it's okay. And it's okay to be you. I know y'all have heard me say that a million times, but it's really that simple. I've also said to people that I've worked with, the process is very simple. What's complex is that we're undoing a belief system and a pattern and essentially a habit that we've been carrying for majority of our lives. That's the part that feels complex or complicated, is that we're having to unravel. I guess using Brainspotting is a very rapid way of doing that. And I think, I love to learn different modalities because it's kind of like having various tools in your toolbox. And there is no one size fits all. I think this is another thing that our society really needs to branch away from, is we have to look at each person as an individual and hear each person's story individualistically. And yes, we have similarities, and that's the beauty of kind of doing these group trainings, is you feel the resonance, like, I relate and resonate with that person's story. Their healing becomes my healing becomes their healing, and you see how we're all interconnected in that way. And yet this one size fits all, what works for you might not work for me, and vice versa, or what might work for you in one phase of your life might not work in another. So it's really this very intuitive process of tuning into what do you need? What feels right for you in this moment? But all of it and any of it, no matter what it is, has to be held in this space of presence and love and acceptance. And Mark was talking about, we don't talk about love in therapy. I mean, I talk a lot about it in my coaching practice, but I think, in traditional therapies, there's maybe more protocol, there are more rules. And what's beautiful about Brainspotting is really moving away from that and really, again, coming into this place of presence and really just trusting that trusting that the brain can self-heal. It's really quite remarkable. So what do I want to say about all of this? And what do I want to say about these past years? Because I've been thinking about how I was having this conversation with a friend of mine last week. That's so much has happened in the last 3 years, individually and collectively, and how it's so odd that we kind of just move on as if nothing's happened. And I think, again, our culture and society is really good at sweeping things under the rug. And what you recognize in doing any kind of therapeutic work, the work that I do with individuals tends to always go back to one's childhood. because all of our memories, our wounding, our trauma, I mean, David Grand would even say that most of our trauma comes from pre-verbal time. Some experience, trauma in utero, or in birthing. It's complex. But the point of what I'm trying to make is that it goes so far back, and it's something that we store in the body. The body remembers everything, our emotional body, our cellular body, even just our physical body. Like I was working on, I've got like a tick on the right side of my body. And I know that stems at least from the age of 7, if not before. And so this whole kind of, we sweep things under the rug and let's just pretend that didn't happen. Let's just ignore that. Let's just distract ourselves and keep on going. There is no way. Things don't get pushed away. They get pushed down. And the more that we push down and we slap layer after layer after layer, it's no wonder that at a certain point people get ill or they get injured. It's a way of the body saying, hey, I need your attention right now. You need to actually stop and look at me. And you need to give me your loving attention, because otherwise, we're going to get more injured or we're going to get more sick. And I'm not saying this to scare you. I'm just saying that the body has is very intelligent and very wise, because I believe it wants to self-heal, and it absolutely has the capacity to self-heal. We're just very good at ignoring it. And so the invitation is not just to look back at, okay, what's happened in your life that you want to look at and you want to, resolve, heal, release, but really as almost like a daily practice of self-care. This is why for me, authenticity is so important to me, because it's really just the act of being honest with yourself. And in the act of being honest with yourself, there cannot be any judgment. Because if you're honest with yourself, but you're judging yourself for your honesty, then that creates more suffering. And it actually just creates unnecessary suffering, as I've talked about in the past, because there might be, oh, this is going on for me. And that there's the discomfort in that already. But then there's no, you shouldn't be feeling that way. You should be feeling that way. You go into the story, you go into a narrative, you go into what other people might think. What does society think? What do my parents think? What do my friends think if I make this choice? But so many people are living a life for someone else, not for themselves. And believe you me, you will get to a point in your life, I think when you get into your 40s, you're like, what the fuck am I doing? This isn't where I thought I was going to be. And that's even, I can even say that I've had that experience, even though I've actually lived a life that I have to say I'm very grateful that I've followed my heart for a lot of the way, or I haven't fully lived it for other people. And yet there's still stuff where I go, God, was I really doing what my heart desired in that moment? And everything also is about timing. Sometimes we do have to, if you have a child, there's a time where you put your child in front of you, or, family members or things like that. But it's like, how do we actually show up generously for those in our lives, but not at the expense of our own well-being? How do we keep the battery charged and the well filled, with what we need in order to feel alive and nourished and fulfilled and inspired and connected, and yet, still be in, I was going to say be in service to others, but actually that's not everyone's calling. So I'm not going to say that, because that might not be true for others. But what I'm trying to say is to not live our life selfishly, but not to live our life selflessly either, right? Like, it's really a combination of the more that we take care of ourselves, the more that we're in turn able to take care of others, or to give to our work, for example, whatever it is. So honesty. Honesty, and not sweeping things under the rug, knowing that wherever they get swept or hidden or stuffed, they ain't going away, And so really the best thing that we can do is to go in and allow those things to be heard, felt, processed. So if I look at this, collectively, I would imagine over these last years, people have felt fear, anxiety, pressure, maybe loss and grief, pain. There might have been death, there might have been illness, there might have been division, there might have been separation, there might have been discrimination. There's so many things that every individual has gone through, and no one side or one person's story is better or worse. Like, we've all been through a massive whirlwind, life-changing, upside down, topsy-turvy, wonky world kind of an experience that we've gone through as a collective. And I think as we're moving forward, the idea of healing as a means to move forward and as a means to evolve, it's kind of like now or never. It's really important. We cannot continue as we have been. And I think actually if you come to do work with, whether it's a coach or a therapist or a breathwork facilitator or a yoga instructor or, somatic, it doesn't matter what it is. What we're doing is we're coming to the point and realization of like, you know what, I can't continue doing this the way that I've been doing it. And actually the act of me showing up and asking for support and receiving that presence that I was talking about so that I can be held in a space of safety and love and acceptance so that I can process and heal. I think that is such an act of great self-generosity and love to just say, I don't want to be in this suffering anymore. I don't want to be coping anymore. I don't want to be in survival anymore. And it doesn't matter what your story is. And like I said, it doesn't matter if the trauma is with a big T or a little t. We've all experienced it. We've all been wounded. We've all at times felt like we're not good enough, or not lovable enough, or not significant enough, or not something enough. And so it's like getting to this point of, am I willing to look at myself and love myself, all parts of myself, so that I can really just be free? Because what was so remarkable, and I love things that kind of drop you into the right deep brain. I go there very easily personally. So whether it's, through theta healing or now having discovered more profoundly Brainspotting, or if you do plant medicine or something that really drops you out of the linear left brain thinking where we've just been too heavily on that side. And it really is limiting. It really is. Like, we have an amazing brain, let alone like an amazing just whole system in our body, in our heart, in our gut. When you connect all three together, it's phenomenal. We're incredibly intelligent and just amazing beings. Like, we haven't been told that, but we really, really are. But just the brain alone, what I've learned in its capacity to self-heal, when you drop into the deeper parts of your brain, like, wow, what you can experience. When I moved through all of these different, it's kind of like riding a wave. And sometimes you plunge deep down and you kind of get bashed up against the rocks. Well, it doesn't feel like that, but you go into the pain of something but the release, it's such a relief. And then you'll ride this beautiful wave and you'll feel this expansion and this lightness. And, I've had, ages ago when I had done a psilocybin journey, I remember going through the fear stage, like really going through, point of fear and seeing my face in the mirror, and I saw my mom's face. This is the thing, you come into the ancestral stuff. What is the ancestral stuff that we're holding on to, in the fear or the trauma or the pain or whatever? It's not just us, right? It's also our ancestors and the collective. And I could go super deep into that, but I'm not right now. And then once I really sat with that and felt it, you just stay with it. That's the thing, is just stay. That's really, I feel like, is the invitation. That's what's amazing about Brainspotting, is you're staying in stillness, looking at this spot for an hour. And so in a way, like, you're lovingly forced to stay there. And by force, I mean like that's just really the invitation. I mean, of course, you can look away if you need to. You can do whatever you want. But that point is really an invitation to stay with what needs to be processed. And when you stay with the fear, so in the past, the way that I've done that in my practice is you stay with the sensation and you stay with the emotion. You just breathe, you breathe into it. And always when you stay with it, you might have the initial like, whoa, this is intense. But what I hear most of the time, really most of the time, is there's relief because it's finally feeling felt, seen, heard. And then the other side of that is, then it's like my psilocybin journey, and I had this as well in my Brainspotting experiences. Then it's like you come into this, either, you come into a place of like calm or beauty, or I just started laughing at one point, So again, it's so amazing what the body, the mind, our consciousness, our being is capable of, and what it moves through when we just allow it, we just give it the space. We don't have to interfere with it. That's what's so beautiful about doing this work is like you don't interfere with it. You hold the space for it. You give it presence, which means I'm going to stay here for you. And I want to say that it's like we should never underestimate the power of presence. Like, so when I was, I got to do this session with Mark and he held the space for me. I cannot tell you how amazing it felt to be held in just presence, sheer presence. And that sometimes that's enough, because if I the way that I kind of make sense of it somehow, I could do it in two ways. One, I could say, like, I could go into quantum physics and say, well, when something is witnessed, it exists, right? Or I guess it's altered. Maybe of course it always exists, but something about it changes when it's witnessed. And I think we have, as humans, a profound need to be witnessed. Like simply just being witnessed is very nourishing for us. There's something that's like, oh, I'm being acknowledged. My existence is being acknowledged in this moment. And especially when that presence can be, when we can be witnessed with a presence of love and acceptance. This is what I'll move into as what I was going to say initially is it's like the parent. It's like the ultimate parent that could just be there for us as a baby, as a child, as a growing child, with love and acceptance. Now, the thing is that inevitably, at one point or another, at many points or another, our parents can't fully be present for us 100% of the time. They can't give us 100% of our needs 100% of the time because they have their own needs. They have their own humanity that they're dealing with. And I think part of, healing is there's absolutely the space, and to be held in being upset, angry, sad, frustrated, whatever the emotion is towards how we might have felt, and again, at one point or another, how we might have felt that our parents weren't there for us in some shape or form. And equally simultaneously, we can also feel the love that we have for them, right? And the loyalty that we have for them. This is where I say it's always paradoxical, because we can experience two things simultaneously that seem to contradict themselves. But really, it's what we're learning as adults is to show up for our inner child, or this part of us that felt hurt or wounded or ignored or abandoned or rejected or neglected or whatever, and just show up with love. I just say, I love you. I'm here for you. And how that alchemizes, heals, transforms everything. So, really what it is, it's kind of like becoming our own inner parent, or being our own healer, being whatever it is that we're needing and yearning for from the external. It is becoming that and giving that to ourselves. But there's really something to be said when someone can hold the space for you. And I have to say, I feel really honored to be able to do that for people. And also how important I recognize, for me to have that done for me, because I certainly, my story would be like, God, I have, who's going to hold me emotionally? Who's going to help me do that? We all get to that point, right? Like we carry a lot of different things, and how important it is to give that to ourselves, and also to learn how to do that for ourselves, so that as things arise, we're really there and present and holding that, being that container of love for the part of us that is hurting or insecure or afraid or anxious. So this is a little bit all over the place, this podcast, but I guess the invitation is to, it's like I really want to empower you to understand that no matter who you believe yourself to be right now, no matter how maybe frustrating the patterns that you find yourself in, the thought patterns, the belief patterns, the relationship patterns, the work patterns, how you show up in life, if you're in a point where you feel frustrated or annoyed or angry or sad or depressed or whatever it is, I want to empower you to know that you absolutely have the ability to heal and to transform. And not to become a better version of yourself, but just to come back home to who you truly are. But we've got to peel back and come really into the essence of who we are and to go into the deeper aspects of ourselves. Like we can't do this on the surface. Like healing isn't like a snorkeling kind of trip, right? It's deep sea diving. But if you can find someone, whether that's me or someone else that you resonate with, that can hold the space for you. And if you're willing to go in and to trust yourself and to know that, like, yes, it's great to look to others for guidance, but not necessarily for answers. And that's kind of weird to say because, of course, you can go to someone and you can get answers to your questions. But what I mean by that, like not just looking for the answer, like you tell me how to do it, you make it better, you fix me. You tell me what to do, right? That's what we need to get. We need to get out of that paradigm. And we really need to drop into this new embodiment of trusting our own inner knowing, trusting our inner wisdom, and absolutely asking for the guidance if we need that. There's nothing wrong with that at all. Like we are interconnected, relating species that, we need one another. Absolutely. But that whomever you work with, that they are there to empower you in knowing that you can heal yourself, that you can find and trust your own inner knowing and your answers. And that, I don't know, I just think we are moving into a time where we're really turning the old paradigms on their head and discovering potentially a more connected, interconnected way of being, where there's no hierarchy, there's no right or wrong or, shoulds, there's no good or bad, but really coming into this intuitive space. And I think it's pretty flippin' magical, actually, when you do. And it's much more relaxing. Like I worked on a few things around how, when I go into a state of stress or anxiety and we go into a place of wanting to control things, understanding where that came from and then really letting go of that. Oh my God, it's like life is so much more easeful. Not to say that it's always easy, but it's easeful because we're not resisting it. And what someone said in the course that I thought was so great, let's see if I can remember it. Safety isn't being safe. And I could do a whole podcast on that because I've talked about this before. This whole notion, especially the world that we've been living in, got to be safe. Everything has to be around safety, right? Security, safety, surveillance, all of these things. Yes, it's going to keep you more safe. That's not safety. That's control that's coming from a place of fear. And if we're in a state of fear, we don't actually feel safe. We feel safe when we're in a state of love, when we're being held with presence, with acceptance, with love, without judgment, right? So we're needing to shift out of these paradigms. And I have to say, this is completely your choice, but if you want to move into that direction and you want to drop more into a state of love, stop listening to all the fear porn, as they call it, because it's going to, it's going to create a good old challenge and obstacle, in your healing process. However, they also do say the obstacle is the way. So, not resisting anything, but I think being mindful of just like what you choose to feed your body, what do you choose to feed your consciousness? So to wrap this up, I think this is a time where we have an incredible opportunity to heal individually, collectively. And I think this is from thousands and thousands of years. And so it's very exciting to know that, like, we can do this. And actually, we can do it by really choosing to come into that state of presence and love. So the invitation is just notice, how can you bring that into your life? How can you bring that into your practice and into the way that you relate to yourself, especially when you're feeling shitty about yourself? And what would it be like to have this knowing that you are this incredible being that can self-heal? And you might need guidance. You might need someone that can hold the space for you, but you absolutely can do it, because I cannot tell you how many people call for consultation. Like, have you heard of this before? Can you fix this? Can this get better? And I want to empower you to say, like, yes, you got to be willing. You got to be willing to go in, but absolutely you can. So yeah, just see if you can drop into that. Like, what if you knew that you were fully capable of healing? What would you do with that? How would you feel to know that you have that empowerment within yourself, that power and that capacity? How would that change everything? Okay, I'm going to shut up now because this is a super long one. But as always, take it or leave it as resonates. Whatever might kind of come up that might trigger you, take it as a point to contemplate upon. And you know where to find me if you feel like you need guidance and for the space to be held for you on your journey. And loving you from afar. You've been listening to Raw Conversations with Corinne Bloom. Thanks so much for showing up, listening in, and being a part of the conversation with me.